Hello everyone, and welcome to Flosstube episode number 4. So this is the Rabe Creations podcast. My name's Nicole, and I'm coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, where I live with my husband Barry and my wonderful, beautiful rescued Rottweiler named Grace. So for those of you who celebrate, happy Easter. It is Good Friday today, as I am recording this video, and this is the strangest Easter in the history of the world, at least in my history, because it doesn't feel like Easter at all. We are still practicing social distancing and following the best advice of our health professionals. And that has us celebrating Easter alone. So there will be no big family get-together as there usually would be. It'll just be me and my husband and the dog. Both of my sons live on their own, well, with their significant others, but not in our home anymore. My mom and dad also live here and talk to them regularly on the phone and check in and make sure everything's going all right. Both my sisters also live here, check in regularly on the phone, make sure everything's all right. But other than that, haven't seen in a social way any members of my family in quite some time now. It feels like this has been going on forever already, and I know it hasn't, but it sure feels like it. I hope you're all safe. I hope you're all following the best advice of your health professionals wherever you are, staying healthy, staying safe. All right, so as I said, this is Flosstube number 4. I do record a podcast every week, but I rotate back and forth between crochet and cross stitch. So if you are looking for a cross stitch, yay, you found the right one. If you're looking for a crochet, you'll have to wait till next week when I will upload another video for you. All right, so let me see. That was my little bit of an update. Not a whole lot going on. There's only so much that can go on while you're sitting in the house. Been getting lots of stitching done, although some of my focuses have changed, and we'll talk about that as we go through my whips. I've got some finishes for you, some shop news update, so lots of exciting things going on. A little bit of haul, not a whole lot of haul. Did a couple of online, one online order has come in, and a chart that I won is also here, and I'll show that to you as well. So yeah, that's where we're at. Let's get started, shall we? Let's start out with my one finish that's not fully finished. So we'll start out with that. I've been working on this for a while, and you've seen it as it's been progressing, and this is Ye Olde Coffee House. It is a chart by Little House Needleworks, and I found it in a rather old magazine. It is still available from a few sources out there. I was able to Google it and find it in a few sources. So a little bit of information about this. This is worked up on what I believe is a 16 count aida that I hand dyed myself. All of the colors, some of the colors are as charted, DMC colors, and some are my own conversions. I did a few changes on it. I did change the door to red to match the little heart and the little berries along the way. And then I did sign the piece at the bottom. Now, I don't know if other people find this, but I find that a lot of times when I'm working from especially magazines, and it doesn't seem to matter whether I'm doing cross stitch or even crochet, there's a lot of mistakes in magazines. So I'm starting to learn that when you crochet or when you cross stitch off of a magazine chart, and you want it to look like the picture of the finished project, it's well worth it to continuously be referencing the picture as well as the chart. For example, in Olde Coffee House, there were at least 3 mistakes that I'm aware of. The first, it's charted so that this top row of stitching is sitting right on top of this little bit of lace work underneath it. But at the bottom of the chart, it is actually charted so that there's a space between the two. And when I looked on the picture that was of the stitched piece in the magazine, it did show it with a space. Now mine is touching because I didn't realize that when I started, and I wanted the bottom to match the top, and the two were charted differently. Also, along here, this little motif here had the 2 leaves, but was missing this little flower piece altogether, yet everything else in the pattern is symmetrical. The interesting thing is it was charted without it on it, and it was actually the stitched piece in the magazine also didn't have it on it. So I'm not sure what was up with that. I added it in because I thought everything else is symmetrical. That probably should be as well. And then down here, this first row of stitching on this last leaf, so not horizontal but vertical row, was shifted up by 1, and it should have been down by 1. And I was able to fix that again as I went. But I just found it interesting. Oh, and here on this motif here, the little sign, one side of it has a little knob sticking out and the other side doesn't. So I chose to have neither on both. The picture, I believe, shows it on both sides. The chart shows it on one side, and because again, I had already stitched this side without realizing that it was an error, I don't have them on at all. I could add them in, but I actually like the way it looks. So I'm just curious if other people notice that there are mistakes more often in the magazine charts than there are in, say, the physical charts that you get from the designers and the distributors themselves, or whether you find that there's a number of mistakes in those physical charts as well. Just curious. All right, so I am going to pause for 1 second because I have to pull some of my pieces out of my Easter display behind my shoulder and show you some fully finished pieces that I have to share. Alrighty, I'll be right back. All right, so I'm back. It always feels weird because I know for you it's only seconds, and for me it was a few moments. So moving on to a couple of fully finished pieces, starting with this little pillow. So you may recognize this finished stitch. I showed it, I believe, last week as a finish, and it is the summer chart that I showed last week. So I have finished it off as in just a simple pillow finish. This fabric I just had in my stash. I have a fairly extensive fabric stash, and I thought it went nicely, nice and subtle. It's just a little rose print. And then for the trim, I don't know about you, but if you're trying to do any fully finished pieces right now, it's a little tough because we can't shop in person anywhere. And, you know, buying floss online, buying Aida online, buying patterns online is easy enough. We kind of know what we're expecting. But when it comes to finishes and whatnot, I don't know, I'm just a tactile person. Even fabric, it's hard for me to buy unless I can actually see it and touch it and yeah, just to see it in person. We all know that the colors on computer monitors can vary from monitor to monitor, and you're never quite sure if it's exactly what you're looking for. So that all being said, we're having to be very creative right now in accessing what we have in our homes and using those to create finishes. And that is a little bit of what happened here with this pillow. So the fabric was from Stash. The polyfill inside was from Stash. Now I do put a fusible interfacing on the back of the stitched side when I sew up the pillow, so that, you know, interfacing doesn't come poking out. It also helps to, I think, make it a little more secure. It gets rid of any see-throughness of the stitched fabric, if there happens to be any. So then I stitched it all together, turned it right side out, sewed it shut along the bottom. And then I went into my yarn stash and I pulled out a lace weight yarn in this mauvey color. Just did a long chain, and then went back along in a double crochet and did a chain, a long expanse of double crochet, sort of making like a ribbon, and just fastened it off. And then I have sewn that along the edge of the little pillow, leaving enough to tie a little bow at the top. And I really like the way this turned out. I think that the yarn complements the oatmeal type aida that I use quite nicely. The color, I think, complements quite nicely. So I'm quite pleased with this tiny little pillow finish. And then we move on to another full finish. And this one I had to be even more creative with my finishing. Yeah, so I happened to find, I'm going to show you the back of it first, because I happened to find in with my my scrapbooking paper, because I am a multi-crafter. So in with my scrapbooking paper, I had a box of paper, and this is the lid of the box. And I thought, well, you know what? I can use that as a frame to finish on. And that's what I did. So here is my finish. So I placed it inside the box lid, and being a scrapbook paper box lid, it was nicely lined with a different fabric than or a different paper than the polka dots, but you can still see the polka dots sort of around the very edges. This is my Easter chart that I showed you last week as a work in progress. This is my own design, and it is now available on my Etsy shop. So if you would like to stitch this Easter, I'm calling it Easter bands, and if you'd like to stitch this, it is listed in Etsy as a PDF download. The stitching itself did not take me all that long, although I was fairly monogamous with it. It's not a hard stitch. It's pretty simple, pretty basic, and I think it would be very appropriate for beginner stitchers if that happens to be you. I like the simplicity for this type of an Easter banding. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. And as you can see, there is the row of flowers. Then there is Easter with the bunnies on either side, another row of flowers, the Easter eggs along the middle here, the last row of flowers. And in the last row of flowers, there are 2 yellow chicks and 1 black crow, because Rabe Creations. You could, of course, do whatever you want, and, you know, not everybody needs to have a crow on every piece like I do. So if you wanted to make that a yellow chick, well, I wouldn't say no, but I think it's kind of cute as a crow. And then to finally finish it, I had this pom-pom trim just in stash. So I lined it top and bottom with the pom-pom trim. And then I tied a little bow out of this ribbon, again from stash, and put a little heart button in the middle. And that is my finish. So nothing too big or extravagant, but all from stash. The entire thing was finished from stash, and I'm kind of proud of that. It's interesting to see people's finishes right now, because people are having to be a little bit more creative than normal, because we can't just run out to the big box store and buy things for finishing. So yeah, there it is. And as I said, the chart itself is available in my Etsy shop, linked below. Alrighty, so those are my finishes that I am sharing with you this week. And now we can move on to my works in progress. So with the projects that I've been working on, which are all behind me on the chair, I will awkwardly grab those and move them onto the table. So for those of you who have been watching me for a while, you'll know that I tend to count my stitches. I am a lapsed member of the School of Magical Stitches. I say lapsed because I haven't been participating for the past couple of weeks. And that has actually translated into me not counting my stitches either. So I won't be able to share stitch counts with you today. I'm not sure why the change has happened. Partly I think it's because I want to work on the projects that I have. I don't want more than my, 6 to 7 whips on the go at a time. I wouldn't be comfortable having, 20 or 30 whips on the go because I like to see things get completed. I've been doing my own designing and I need to work on those pieces as well. So I was finding that it was almost too much pressure to be doing the School of Magical Stitches assignments and trying to find projects that will fit those assignments and feeling like I have to stitch 500 stitches on this piece because that's what I need to do in order to be successful. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I want to be able to do all the things, and it just wasn't relaxing me. I mean, who knows? It could also have something to do with this whole climate of being locked in and just wanting to take some control back. Who knows? But long story long, I found myself just stitching on things. So I have changed what I was doing and not necessarily, as I said, doing the School of Magical Stitches. And I've just put all of my current projects into a rotation, and each day is assigned to a chart. If I don't get any stitches on that chart that day, it's okay. I just move. The next day, though, is another chart. So that chart will get missed out for that week if something else comes up. But for the most part, I do manage to find some stitchy time every day. So let me show you my first whip that I'm going to show you today is the bee. And I've, again, shown this one to you before. So the bee was a PDF download, and the chart is by Pyro Dog Pins on Etsy, and I will link it all down below. And this is where I'm at. So this bee is a photorealistic type chart, not full coverage as you can see. It is just the bee that's going to be there. And I would say I am about 3/4 of the way through now. So I have finished the wing. The body of the bee is now complete. There's a couple of stitches here in the wing that I have to go back to, but the body itself of the bee is complete. As you can see here, I have started on the second wing, and then I have the bee's head to do. So I believe I'm about 3/4 of the way complete. Oops. I am doing this on an 18 count white aida in the called for DMC colors. And I really, really like this. I think it's going to be a beautiful piece, and I can hardly wait to have it finished and hanging on my wall. As always, I will be linking all of these down below. I can't tell you what my stitch count was because I wasn't counting my stitches. All right, so the next piece that I did work on was a new start last week, and that is the Prairie Schooler Who's There. So I am working this on the called for 32 count lamb's wool linen, which I am still really enjoying working on. And I will say, as I said last week, that if you are an aida stitcher who is cautious about attempting any work on linen, try this linen. It is really easy to stitch on. It's got a little bit more of a stiffness to it, which I think will appeal to those of us who love our aida stitching. So this is where I've gotten. I finished the entire border, including this little bit of a side detail on each corner. And then I have started up here in the corner with the first owl. So the majority of this chart seems to be worked in black DMC. I am using good old 310. It is not the color that is called for. In fact, none of the colors I'm using are the called for colors. I've just gone again, trying to stitch from stash as much as possible during these times of confinement. I can show you the 3 colors that I am using though. So I am using DMC 3883 as the orange, and I'll hold it up against the fabric so you can see what it'll look like. I am using DMC 3882 as the brown, and of course 310. So those I think will look quite nice together. I tend to like muted colors a little bit, so I think those will be quite nice. Yeah, so I'm enjoying this stitch. Like I said, the lamb's wool linen is easy to stitch on, well worth the try if you are looking to branch out to linen from Aida. And I'll put this back in here and move on to my next project. But first, I'm going to check to make sure I'm not going to run out of space on my video card. All right, so moving on to my next WIP, I have Happy Halloween by the Witchy Stitcher. The Witchy Stitcher does have an Etsy shop. She also has her own webpage, and I believe this pattern is available on both. I chose the PDF download, instant gratification, and all that. And I am happy to say that this one is nearing completion. I should have more finishes next week. Now, it does help, of course, that we are on lockdown and, you know, have lots of stitchy time on our hands. But here is where I'm at. So I am quite pleased with how this is turning out. I really, really like the vintage feel of this, and if it's called Vintage Happy Halloween, so that makes sense. I really, really am enjoying this. So I'm almost finished now. I have a little bit of detail to do underneath the pumpkin here and a few more small motifs around the entire piece, and I will be complete. So I do expect this to be a finish for next podcast, so in 2 weeks. All of the lettering is now complete with the black and then the 2 tones of a color on each one. So Happy is in the 2 tones of teal and Halloween is in the 2 tones of orange. This chart does work with a lot of the DMC étoile, which is quite fun to work with. I've noticed, and I don't know if any of you have noticed, if you've worked with the étoile, that the black is less sparkly than the other colors. Has anybody else noticed that? I found that the orange is really sparkly, that the beige color is quite sparkly, but that the black is very subtle in its sparkle. I'm not sure whether I would think that the black is worth the additional cost. Now, it could just be the skein that I got does not have as much sparkle in it as some of the other blacks. But if you've been working with the étoile at all, let me know what you think. If you've found that same thing, that the black tends to be less dramatic in its sparkle than the other colors, or whether it's just fluke and I got a less sparkly skein. But yeah, so I'm quite pleased with how that turned out. Halloween is one of my favorite times, so I tend to enjoy working on Halloween projects. There will always be at least one, usually more than one, on the go at a time. So I have one more WIP to show you, and that is my And Sew to Bed. So this pattern is coming out of a Cross Stitch Crazy magazine, so one of those UK cross stitch magazines. It is, in the magazine, it is charted to be a hot water bottle cover. I am not doing a hot water bottle cover. I am just going to have it framed up on my wall. And I do apologize. I never iron these for you guys. But yeah, so I am going to have it framed up in the wall in my bedroom. So I have gotten quite a bit done on this. As you can see, the word bed is now complete. And it is actually done in 3 tones of purple, 2, and then the shooting star at the bottom here. The moon and the star itself are done in a light effects. And I'm just working that with 1 strand. It doesn't give as good coverage as 2 strand, but I found 2 strand was not working. It was too bulky, and yeah, even on this 14 count aida, I didn't like what it was doing. I also found, with going back to the Happy Halloween piece with the étoile, as well as with this light effects, you can't, well, at least I struggle trying to do a loop start with it. I do find that you have, if you're using 2 strands, you have to have them separated from the beginning. Otherwise, the stitches don't lay nicely. And I found that especially with that étoile. I kind of cut the étoile length that I'm going to be working with. And then with the étoile, I sort of work my fingers along it, almost like you were using a waxer, but I don't use wax. I just work my fingers along it to bring down the poofiness. If you've worked with the étoile floss, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about when I say the poofiness of that floss. And then it does lay much more nicely than if you just try and stitch without doing that or without cutting it. It just, if you try and do a loop start, those first couple of stitches are just all poofy, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants a poofy stitch. So yes, back to bed. So I will link all of the information for each of the designs down below, but I'm quite happy with how this is turning out. So the next thing I need to do is the words up here. So it'll say "and sew," and then the to bed, and then the "and sew" is done in 3 shades of pink floss. So that should be happening within the next 2 weeks. I'm not sure if it'll be a full finish for next podcast, but it should have some more work done on it. I really like this shooting star, and I actually did a little bit of the back stitching of these little stars just to see how they would turn out and what they look like, and I really, really like those. I like that, the little bit of delicateness that those are adding to this design. All right, so those are the things I have been working on. And I have a little bit of haul to share with you today. Not a whole lot, because I haven't been shopping very much. What can I say? So first off, let's start off with my new chart. Ta-ding! So this is Lavender's Blue, a cross-stitch pattern by Darling & Whimsy. And I won this from Michelle Bendy Stitchy in one of her giveaways over, I believe it was over Christmas. It's been a while, but that's okay. So it is all charted in DMC colors, which is great. It is, the model here that you see here was stitched on an 18 count hand-dyed aida. So right up my alley. I love purple. It's my favorite color. And this song is a really cute song that reminds me of childhood. Yeah, I think this will be a nice little stitch to do. I'm not sure when I'm going to start it, but maybe soon, because it is rather spring or summery with its lavender, which is also one of my favorite flowers. So this, you know what, I think this chart just moved up in its start category. in the queue, I think I have just talked myself into moving it up the queue. But yes, so Lavender's Blue cross-stitch pattern by Darling & Whimsy. Thank you, Michelle. And my final bit of stash to show you that I have accumulated is some hand-dyed floss. There we go. So these flosses are hand-dyed by Rolanda. I've shown you some of the fabric that she does and I have ordered. And she also does over-dyed flosses, and they are absolutely beautiful. So her colors don't have names, they just have numbers. So I got color 103, which is this beautiful variegated blue. I will be inserting pictures at the end of the video to show you more detail because my camera doesn't like to focus when I hold things up. So I keep going to hold it forward to the camera and realizing that then you're just going to see blurry floss. So there, it is color number 103, and it is grays and blues, navy to a gray to a blue gray. I really like this. It's so pretty. And then color number 4 is this burgundy, sort of goes from a light burgundy to a dark burgundy. Really like this one as well. And I bought both of these colors to be able to start my Mary Mary Needleworker. So I have decided to try and do Mary Mary Needleworker, which is a Lindy Stitches design. It was a market release this year. Using, you know, my own colors, so my own color conversion. So looking at the colors that she has on the chart and then sort of going my own way, I am doing the dark color conversion on that chart. So the night garden, this will be the main color of her skirt, and this will be the writing in her skirt. So I think that will be quite nice. Now I do have an order in for a few more flosses from Hand Dyed by Rolanda. I will probably be using the hand dyed variegated floss on a few of the bigger features on that chart, and then using DMCs to do the fill-in, just to keep the costing sane. So there we go. Color 103 and color number 4. And I do highly recommend Hand Dyed by Rolanda's shop on Etsy. Have had no problems with any of the things that I have ordered from her. All right, so that's it. That's all I have to show you today. As always, if you liked what you saw today, give it a thumbs up. I would love for you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. I do, as I said, release a video every week, trading back and forth between cross-stitch and crochet content. You're welcome to watch both or one or the other, whichever appeals to you. I do have, I am very, very active on Instagram. I will list my Instagram contact information down below, so you can follow me on Instagram. I'm Nicole_DeRob Creations on Instagram. I have a Facebook page as well. Now, it's not a Facebook group, it's just a Facebook page, and that's DeRob Creations. And finally, I would love for you to come on over and visit my Etsy shop. So that is DeRob Creations, surprise, surprise, on Etsy. In there, I do have original cross-stitch charts and crochet patterns. I also have yarny project bags, as well as cross-stitch tote bags. I have, let me see, what else have I got on there? I've got hand-dyed yarn that I hand-dye naturally myself using botanicals and foodstuffs and all kinds of neat things. I've got a couple of videos, actually, if you're interested, of showing my dyeing process with the yarn. I also have hand-dyed Aida on my in my shop. if you're interested in looking at some of my hand-dyed aida. And finally, I am introducing some floss drops as well. So a nice variety of goods for both the cross-stitchers and the crocheters out there. All right, I've rambled on as much as I can. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And as always, I will encourage you to find some time for yourself. I know that that sounds really weird to say, considering we're all locked away in our houses. But when I say find time for yourself, I mean time for self-care. You know what? Take that bubble bath. Work on your cross stitch. Take some time to do what you want to do, not what you think you have to do, but what you want to do. If you're struggling with this whole lockdown thing, make sure you reach out to someone. Take care of you. You're important. Be kind to yourself. Next, make sure you're being kind to others. This is a really stressful time. I worked for years and years and years in retail, and one of the things that we had to learn is never to take it personally if a customer was snarky with you. To always remember you don't know what's going on in that person's world. So when you're out there at the grocery store, you know, you might be wearing a mask, you might be wearing gloves, you might be really super conscious of how close people are. And I know at my grocery store, they have arrows and you can only enter aisles from one direction. And it's a stressful situation now. It's not easy. Please, for the love of all goodness, be kind to each other. Smile. I know you can't really see a smile behind a mask, but just be kind. A kind word, a nod of the head, you know, waiting your turn, not getting frustrated, not getting angry. Just be kind to each other. Choose kindness. It's so very important. And that's all I have for you today. I'll see you next time. Bye now.